Hi, I'm Samantha Anderson, Director of Communications for Newton Public Schools, and we are here to give you guys some information about those economic surveys you've been hearing about everywhere. We'll go through some questions we wrote out that we've been getting a lot, and then if you have any questions, just feel free to leave them in the comments section. But first, I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. You may already know them, but just in case, Mr. Van Rankin, why don't you go first?
Fred Van Rankin, Superintendent here at Newton Public Schools.
I'm David Decker, and I'm the Director of Finance here at USD 373.
All right, well, thank you both for being here. We'll kind of get started on the question. So can someone just explain what the economic survey is and why it's important?
Sure. Well, really, what the economic survey is it's a way for the federal government to help determine how much funding a school district receives. And how that's done is by identifying students who are using their terms at risk. And the best way to determine that at-risk status from the federal government is by having families fill out what's called an economic survey. And what you'll see in that survey is it'll ask you some really basic things, such as what is your household income and how many people are in your household. Fundamentally, from those questions alone, then the federal government draws up a formula that says, because you serve this many students and because so many of them are at risk, then this is the allocation of money that your district receives. But what I think is important, Sam, is to point out that that money isn't necessarily just for determining who gets free and reduced lunches. What it really does is it helps supplement our budget in terms of what we can provide for curriculum, what we can provide for resources, what we can provide for transportation, what the district can really give as an opportunity for students, and how well the district can serve students based on their funding. So in a nutshell, filling it out is very important because it determines how much funding the school district gets. If we don't have people fill it out, then we run the risk of being underfunded, and that's no good for the students.
One correction I do want to make, David had referred to that as a federal government thing. This is actually a state level thing, not a federal government. This has no tie to the federal government. The reason we're having to do the household economic survey is because of the fact that all lunches are going to be free again this year. The federal government did not release any sort of free and reduced lunch forms or process through which we would have normally collected this information. So this really serves as a proxy for state level at-risk funding. And there are like 10 categories that are equivalent to what an at-risk student might fall under, okay? There's no way to come up with a standardized method of gauging from between districts, you know, what those categories might be like, because some of them say not performing at grade level. Well, that might be different here than it is, for example, in Valley Center. We might have a different designation or definition for that. So historically, what the state has done is use the free lunch to serve as that proxy. That free lunch designation is a federal program, but since they're not doing that this year, the state has this household economic survey that's going to take its place for state funding only. For every one student that we get that qualifies according to that household economic survey for a free lunch, okay, we get 0.484 of the student FTE, which is around $2,200. But once again, want to really emphasize that state level funding. So then I'll be quiet for a while.
And then, so where can families find this survey? Is it online yet? Will it be soon? Can they fill it out online? Do they need to print it out? How can they get this done?
Right, so starting July 12th, families will be able to fill it out online. So we are going to send out an email, Sam, going out to families with links to this survey, and the whole thing can be completed online. But we also realize too that there are some families and some situations where maybe online is not the best option or not the one they choose. And so we also have the ability for families to go ahead and fill out the printed form physically. And that can be done either July 13th, 14th, and 15th. And we're going to have them available at the enrollment help days and at our attendance center and here at the district office. So hopefully that gives folks a lot of options, but we're hoping that people can fill out the form, because then again, starting on July 15th, families can actually start paying for fees. And so we have this releasing a little bit before the actual fees are able to be paid. And our hope with doing that is that more families will fill out the survey and provide that information.
So that's a little different than in years past. So I just want to
Sure.
go over it. So this year, families will be able to start paying on July 15th, not tomorrow.
ma'am.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am, and that's done strategically because we're trying to encourage families to go ahead and fill out that survey. And luckily, the superintendent was generous enough to provide a little bit of an incentive for filling out that survey. And we want to provide families the opportunity to take advantage of that incentive.
So speaking of which, what is the incentive? Why should families, apart from helping out their district and their schools in general, what else can families get out of filling out the survey?
Well, Fred was nice enough to sweeten the pot a little bit and say, hey, basically, we know families are out there. We know this information is important. So how can we do this and make it equitable and something that families want to do? And what they came up with was essentially providing for every student that's enrolled, you can receive up to $20 in discounts. Now, how that's done is you receive $10 off of the enrollment fee and $10 off of the tech fee, respectively, for each student that you enroll. So it doesn't really matter if you fill out the survey and you don't qualify for free lunch, or you don't qualify for reduced lunch, or what amount that you put in on that survey. Hopefully it's truthful, but regardless of what that amount is, your family could still qualify for those for that discount. And so we're really pleased with that. Now, we do realize, of course, that some students don't have to pay tech fees, and a lot of students do, but depending on where your student sits, what grade level they're at, it could be up to a $20 reduction for each kid in the household.
7 through 12 grades are the ones that do pay the technology fees. So that's those students would apply for that $10 off, and the curriculum fee is for all grade levels. So that's an important thing to remember. And remember too, along with that form, there's going to be a consent for disclosure form. And I'm sure David is going to talk about that. So I'll be quiet again.
Well, will you tell us about the consent for disclosure form?
Oh, absolutely, Sam. And we know for sure that people often are curious about, well, what are you going to do with my data? How's it going to be secure? And we take that very seriously. I mean, we pride ourselves in our ability to keep our data secure, to keep our parents and student information only give it to those that absolutely need it. So the bottom line is this, is that the only ones that are actually going to view it are the administrators that absolutely need to see it to make those decisions on reduced weight, on reduced fees, or on lunch, etc. But then on top of that, though, there is a form attached to this survey that's called the consent for disclosure. And what that really does is it allows the parent to be in the driver's seat of how their information is used. And let me give you a quick example of why it's important to fill that out, or why a parent may choose to. For instance, there's a lot of talk right now because some internet companies, some fiber optic companies are offering discounts to students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Well, one way that a cable company can help determine that is they'll call the local school district and say, hey, we're trying to determine if the David Decker family actually applies for free and reduced meals so that they qualify for our reduced internet service. And at that point, then you can see the administrator on our end will want to be able to say, yes, we can disclose that, or no, we can't. And so there's benefits to filling out the consent to disclosure, but all of the parties that we disclose to are listed on that form. And I'll tell you, outside of the internet company, I can't think of another agency that isn't USD 373 based. But in general speaking, that's what it's about. And that allows us to do that for some families, but also generally just lets you know that the data is secure and that we're only using it here within the district to help serve the family.
That also allows us, if you do qualify based upon that form, to apply those additional discounts for being free or reduced. In some areas, you'll have the waived fee if you're free for curriculum, but you don't necessarily have it waived for technology unless you've completed that consent for disclosure. So the same thing with activity fees and things of that nature. So there is a list on the district website of what fees can be reduced based upon your level, whether it's whether or not you qualify for the free lunch.
Okay, and we talked about this in the beginning, but I really want to make sure that families understand this. Just how important is it to the district that these forms get filled out, and like what all can it impact as far as our funding goes and just things like that?
Sure. Well, I mean, again, I go back to it's extremely important because it helps determine our funding formula. But more importantly is, well, what do we actually use that funding for? And that funding is actually used for impacting students. So it's the items that are going to touch the daily lives of those students here when they're attending school. And so for sure, in order to make the Newton School District the best it can possibly be, we want to make sure that everything's at the proper funding level, and that we're not underfunded, whether that's in relation to our ability to transport people, whether that's our ability to provide a good curriculum, whether that's our ability to just provide basic equipment that the students are going to need throughout the year. So extremely important. It's a very small form. It's short. I've ran through it a couple times myself. It takes all of about 5 minutes to fill out. And so we're hoping that families take that time, fill it out, help the district get the resources it needs at any income level.
All right, and we're getting
If I could
Oh,
say one
yes.
more thing there, Sam, one thing to keep in mind, the reason that we really wanted to consider the incentive for this, when we were creating the budget or crafting the budget this past school year, we have to estimate how many students will be involved with the free lunch or the reduced lunch program. Once again, that goes back to, as we have said already, that helps us obtain more funding. We lost at least, we know that we were down in enrollment, but we were proportionally down a lot lower in that proposed number of students that would qualify for free lunch than we should have been based upon what our normal proportion of free lunch students to normal enrollment was, by about 90 students. And so when you do the math on that, that was a couple $100,000 that the district in last year's budget, which is this current fiscal year ending tonight at midnight. Okay. That's one of the reasons why we're really making this concerted effort to get this information out to you. This is a tremendous benefit to us. And if we have to spend, $30,000, if it cost us that much in terms of waiving some fees in order to gain a couple $100,000, that's money well spent. So that's one of the reasons really why this is so important. And we're trying to incentivize that a little bit, is we want to capture every dollar for our district that we can of state funding.
Okay, well, Happy New Year then. And then when do families need to turn this in by to get the form in time and also to get their reimbursement or discount?
Sure. We're hoping that families turn it in pretty soon, but our absolute kind of pushback date that we'd really like to see everything in by is September 1st for all those current families in the district.
All right. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
One question that I was thinking of, Sam, that parents might want to ask or might want to know is, well, what if I've already either paid my fees? Hopefully, because of the way that we're staggering this, since the form is actually out before fees are able to be paid, that they go ahead and fill out the form first. But I know it is technically possible for them to kind of do it in reverse. So if that happens, what we're going to do is we're looking at if they qualify, we'll go ahead and issue those refunds, or we'll look at if they have a past balance. If they have a past balance from a previous year in either enrollment or in technology, then we'll apply the discounts to that balance. So definitely we want them to encourage to fill it out either way.
All right, Mr. Van Rankin, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just kind of beat the dead horse a little bit here. Another reason to qualify or to fill out the forms, just when you look at the fee schedule, which is located on our website, for example, we talked about the technology fee. That's $50 for students in grades 7 through 12 at NHS and Chisholm Middle School. If you qualify for free lunch and you've completed this form and you have the consent for disclosure form also, you would actually only pay $20. So that's $30 off of that fee, which is kind of a big deal. So just you can see that list. For example, the pay to participate is $50 per activity. If you qualify for freelance, it's $30. So there are other benefits to qualifying that you would receive by completing the form. So I just want to make that clear.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and thank you both for being here. As always, if you have any questions, you can email them to info@usd373.org and I will get those to you. I said that kind of fast. So info@usd373.org. And you can also leave some comments on the Facebook post. I'll be checking those, and just make sure you keep an eye out on July 12th for those surveys. I hope everybody has a great holiday weekend.